Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph, and this week is just a casual reading vlog where I'm trying to read some of my most anticipated releases, but also a few books that I've been really excited about this year and I finally got around to reading them. In total, I ended up reading 5 books in this vlog, but when I tell you I was in the reading zone this week, it was unmatched. I've been on fire, and the week isn't even over. I just have a 24-hour readathon that I'm trying to film next, so I stopped the vlog early. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this vlog, and thanks for hanging out with me, friends. Hello friends, I'm playing Animal Crossing. It's my day off and I'm playing Animal Crossing, and I can't lie, I'm really deep. I'm deep into my Animal Crossing replay, and I say replay because I have built up an entire island like 2 or 3 times just to restart, and I decided that I wanted to restart again, and this time I want to do like a natural island with like kind of a cottagecore witchy theme, mainly for the fall, because that's like every time I get back into Animal Crossing, it's always the fall. Okay, and what I mean by a natural island is that basically all of the cliffs and the rivers and things like that that are already existing on my island as I started, I'm not gonna get rid of them. I might modify some things just to make it make more sense to what I wanna do, but otherwise I wanna try to build up an island where I'm actually utilizing what I started with. And I also think that my museum is gonna stay in the tent. I don't think I'm gonna upgrade my museum. If you wanna know how serious I am about it, I just took a picture of my map and I'm gonna put it on Procreate, and I'm gonna like map out where I want everything to go. Because I've never done that before, and I always feel like it takes me 10 times longer to do the island because I keep changing my mind and like moving things. But maybe if I actually map it out and get really serious, because I'm a serious gamer, I'm a serious cozy gamer, then maybe my island will be like my dream island. I don't know. I mean, I get bored with things anyway, so it's like I'll probably restart eventually. Oh, here comes Goose. I'm afraid to let go of the camera. I think it's gonna fall over. He's chittering. Did I just cry at Goose chittering for the first time ever? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like when they see a bird or an animal that's like smaller than them that they could hunt, and they do this little chattering type thing. He's doing it. He never does that. He's never done it before. I hope that you could hear it on camera. What a special moment, bud. Wow, I really am a cat mom. I am one of those cat ladies that they're talking about. Okay, anyway. Anyway, while I was doing all my Animal Crossing stuff and getting really serious about being a gamer, I have listened to almost 30% of Immortal Dark, and I'm really liking it. It definitely has those gothic vibes. It's definitely slow burn. It's getting into that dark academia, which I really am enjoying. Our main character is extremely angry, and at every turn she does something that like fuels that anger, and I love it. I love it so much. Basically, human families / bloodlines, human bloodlines, gain power through companionship with vampires. And so it's almost like a vampire adopts a family. Based on that vampire's ranking or status, that family also gains a similar ranking / status. So our main character, Kidan, actually is a part of a family who has a companionship with this vampire named Susenyos. And the thing is that Kidan's family has all died, and her sister June has recently disappeared. And Kidan is convinced that Susenyos is who did it, and she is so adamant that he took June. And so she has decided that instead of turning her back on the bloodline and this companionship, she's going to continue forward with the companionship, and she's going to attend this academy. And their whole purpose at this academy is to push forward human and vampire allegiances. One of the caveats to this is she actually has to live with Susenyos and kind of survive living with him, but also pass all of her classes. And this is kind of her plan. She feels like if she's living with him, she can take him down from the inside, as well as like figure out if this university or anyone within the university is working with Susenyos. And she is terrorizing Susenyos. Like at every turn, she's like, I know you took my sister. I know you killed my family, and I'm gonna get you. And he's like, okay. There have been a couple moments when she like finds evidence to the fact that he may have been involved in her sister's disappearance, but then it kind of backfires in her face. So I think the back and forth between them is kind of hilarious. I don't know if it's meant to be hilarious, but it actually cracks me up because they're both just so intense, and their intense hate for one another truly fuels them to make silly, rash and dumb decisions, and I'm living for it, to be honest. I actually really love our main character. I love how full of anger and hatred she is, and how she's letting that fuel her at every turn, and she is so intent on figuring out what happened to her sister. So I love a little mystery, and from the little I know of the synopsis, there is also going to be an element of other girls going missing. So I'm assuming Kidan is going to do some amateur sleuthing and continue trying to frame Susenyos. I don't know if this is accurate. The tags on here say perfect for fans of romantasy, vampires, morally gray characters, enemies to lovers, villainous romantic leads, dark academia. Villainous romantic leads. You're speaking my language. You're speaking my language. And I can see that because I think our main character, I think she has some things that she's hiding. I think she has something deep within her. I think she has some deep-seated violence in her, and I'm so excited to see how that plays out. I did finish Immortal Dark. I finished it yesterday on my way to work, and I'm having trouble rating this. Like, I think in my heart, I'm like, it's a 3.5 rounded up to a 4 stars, but then I'm like, maybe it's a 4 star because I really liked the ending. But I think it's a 3.5 only because this world is so interesting, and the dynamic between our characters is the one thing that like constantly pulled me back into the story, because I did have quite a few lulls in this book. There were a few times when it just, I don't know, I would lose interest and I wouldn't know where we were like getting to in the story. I mean, I said in the beginning that basically our main character, her sister has been missing, and she thinks Susenyos, the vampire that's connected to her family and her lineage, is the reason that she went missing. And so she hates him. Like, she wants to burn the world down and she wants him to burn with it. That is the type of character she is, and I really, really love her. It's actually kind of funny because I read some reviews after I finished it, and a lot of people find our main character, Kidan, to be really insufferable, which I can see where you're coming from, but I disagree. But it's mainly because I'm the problem. Like, I love a character who wants to burn the world down, who will not shut up about the things that she's trying to accomplish, that she is just so brash and irrational because she wants to find her sister. Like, I absolutely love the female rage aspect to this book. So usually a character like this, I'm gonna eat them up. I'm gonna eat them up because I just love that. So I have seen a lot of people call her insufferable, but I really loved her, and her dynamic with Susenyos is like, it's the thing that kept me tethered to the story in the times when I was like, I don't really understand what we're getting at here. But I think the world also is extremely interesting. This is a take on vampires I haven't really read before. There's a lot of West African mythology in here, or lore rather, and I just really, really loved learning about it. It made this world complex and something that specifically I have not read within the vampire genre before. So I loved all of those aspects, but the pacing was a bit of a struggle. I also think that a lot of the side characters are not fleshed out in a way that really make me care about them. We do spend a lot of time with many of these side characters because Kidan is going to an academy and they are studying, and there's different students and there's different houses, and these houses are related to the various vampires that are these humans' companions. And so there are a lot of different characters in here, not only students, but like different vampires and different people we meet along the way. And I feel like ultimately Kidan and Susenyos are the only two characters that are super well fleshed out that you'll actually care about. Otherwise, the other characters that you meet and I think you're supposed to care about, I just didn't form any connection to them. I feel like I didn't really know them. And even in the end, I felt like they were not well fleshed out enough or on the page enough for me to care about. They felt very flat. So that was a really unfortunate part of it all, because some of the characters are extremely interesting. There's also some character deaths that happen in here that I think were supposed to be more impactful for you as the reader, but it just didn't really impact me the way that I think it was supposed to. So I did have my issues with it, but overall, as a debut novel, I think this is such a strong debut novel. I feel like a lot of people are gonna give this 5 stars. I feel like if you especially are a dark academia girly and you love vampires, you're gonna eat this up. The enemies to lovers, I do think the reference to the Cruel Prince in terms of the dynamic between the two characters, Kiran and Ciseños, like, you're gonna eat it up. You're gonna eat it up. But I'm very surprised that this was considered YA. I think it definitely leans more new adult. There are some YA things about it where I think like the boundaries could have been pushed a lot further had it been an adult. But otherwise, I do feel like this reads very adult. And I think that if you are someone who's like weary about YA, I would really try it out, because I was actually very surprised that it was considered YA. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a 3.5, but I'm rounding it up to 4 stars on Goodreads. And otherwise, I did start a buddy read with Tammy from Tammy Tries to Read, and we are reading There's No Ethan. It's this catfishing story that we both heard about because I listened to the podcast Sweet Bobby and I was talking about it, and Tammy went and listened to it, and then we had this full-on discussion about Sweet Bobby, and we kind of went down this rabbit hole of like different books or podcasts that we should listen to, and we found There's No Ethan. So this is supposed to be the story of 3 women taking down the world or the United States largest catfish, which I don't know how I've never heard of this story, because I'm all about catfish media. I am someone who consumes catfish media regularly. So I'm surprised that I've never heard about this one, but I'm really, really interested, very excited. So I'm definitely gonna be starting it today, but I'll probably listen to the majority of it tomorrow, which is Saturday, because I work, and my first half of the day, I have a lot of like mindless tasks to do. So I like having an audiobook or a podcast, mainly a podcast. So I'm hoping this reads kind of like a podcast. Okay, so on Friday evening, I ended up getting a Skip the Line loan for There's No Ethan, which if you know anything about me, you will know that I love catfishing things or like con artist type of stories. Like I love the show Catfish, and I will consume all types of catfish media, whether it's podcasts, books, TV shows, whatever, I'll consume it. I don't know why, they suck me in. I think my curious brain just wants to know why people do what they do. So anyway, I started it at work, and I ended up getting more than like 50% in at work because it reads so fast. And then I ended up finishing it last night, and let me tell you, I was really vibing, okay? I was really vibing with it because they were going into such detail. To give you the gist of what's happening, or if you don't know what catfishing is, basically it's when 2 people online meet, whether it's through dating sites, Facebook, Instagram, what have you, they meet, and one of them is faking their identity, whether it's just pictures, whether it's pictures and a name, whether it's pictures, name, and like everything about their life. It's all a form of catfishing. So the author of this book in 2011 ended up meeting this guy named Ethan on OkCupid, and they had long and extensive chats on OkCupid, on Facebook, on email, on IM, and she was really falling for this guy. It's funny because the book goes into extreme detail about their conversations. So much so that I'm pretty sure the conversations were just transcripts. So they were the actual conversations between Ethan and the author. So we have a full part, I think it's like 45%, where we are diving so deep into their relationship and their correspondence. And there is a lot of manipulation happening, but there's like a lot of red flags too. No offense to this author, but I feel like there were one too many red flags for her to have stuck around as long as she did. And usually I'm extremely empathetic to people getting catfished, but like this one, I don't know, because the red flags were abundant from like message 2. Okay, it wasn't like it just started happening and he was so charming in the beginning. Like he was saying off the wall shit from the beginning. And I was like, I don't understand how you were sticking around. Like it could have never been me, okay? And I am a people pleaser to my core. So anyway, she goes through this whole story. She goes through her scenario, and then we get to part 2 and we start to learn about other women that he has catfished. And by the time we get to part 3, we do get the reveal. So you get that satisfying like conclusion of who was doing it. But for me, it's always about in Catfish, that moment when you meet the person who's catfishing and they kind of explain themselves. Sometimes it doesn't happen and it's very unsatisfying, but other times, like, the person at least gives some sort of explanation to the situation. In this case, we don't really get that explanation. And like the way it concludes is very womp womp, you know what I mean? Because the subtitle to this book is How 3 Women Brought Down America's Biggest Catfish. And I beg to differ. I'm sorry, as somebody who has probably consumed an unhealthy amount of catfishing content, this is not the biggest catfish in America. Maybe New York. Even then, I'm questioning that. But even Sweet Bobby was more diabolical and more intense and like intricate than this one. And as a matter of fact, Tammy even brought up the really great catfish episode where 3 women come together in the episode who all realized they were getting catfished by the same person and find the guy. He was diabolical, okay? So I don't know, I just feel like the subtitle to this is very misleading, and it just led to me feeling really like, this is just an average catfish episode, which again, it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make what Ethan was doing right. And it doesn't make it okay that he was extremely manipulative and basically is a walking red flag. None of that is okay because I wasn't satisfied with the ending. But I think as a form of media, this is a little bit mismarketed. And I think that if you are a lover of Catfish, especially the show, this isn't something you've never seen before. But I will say that I enjoyed like the narrative experience of this. And I do think it was cool to dive deep into the relationship and like literally see transcripts of what was going on and like what was going through these women's heads when he was doing like wild stuff. I mean, it's so typical of like the pretending to have cancer, pretending a family member died. There was all of that there, all of those layers. So it was nice to be able to dive deep into it in the way that only a book or a podcast could do. And so I think that's why I enjoyed consuming it in this format, and why I think I like podcast versions of the catfishing stuff more than the TV show at this point, even though the TV show is always gonna be an all-time favorite show, okay? You're never gonna get me to stop watching Catfish. Anyway, I usually rate nonfiction, but I don't rate memoirs, and this felt like a memoir, so I'm not gonna rate it. And I don't really feel like judging somebody's situation. Like, we all have vulnerable moments and get into relationships or friendships or situations that are very toxic because of that vulnerability. And I do feel like that's why I'm such an empathetic person towards the catfishing scenario and like people getting catfished. But with this, my real disappointment isn't the story itself. It's just the fact that this was marketed in a way where I was like, oh my God, we're gonna be taking down a big boy. We're gonna be taking him down. And it just really was like an average catfishing scenario. Anyway, I read that. And then I finally started Late Bloomer, and I'm also late to the buddy read that I was supposed to be doing with some of my patrons for this book, but I am now 15% into it, and I like it so far. It's very like quirky and cute, and it's gonna be small town, and one of our main characters bought a flower farm, so you know I love a small town sapphic romance. So I'm very excited to dive back into this one. I also think it's hilarious because one of the main characters, Opal, she's the one who bought the flower farm. She's also an intense people pleaser. And I feel like what I'm getting from this is people pleasing is a disease. And I have that disease, unfortunately. Anyway, that's what she's dealing with, is people pleasing. Anyway, I'm gonna go make a matcha and go to work. Same spot, but much later in the day because I'm finally off of work and it is so hot. Like, I know I keep complaining about it in vlogs, but we're apparently having the hottest heat wave that's ever been recorded in history. So look at us go. Look at us go. All my plants are dying. Plants that I've had for years. My garden is dead. I'm really upset about it. Anyway, hi, I wanted to update because I actually made it to 50% into Late Bloomer, and I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of an update about this one. So I'm struggling with this book because there's so much that I like about it, but at the same time, I feel like the 2 love interests, Opal and Pepper, don't have any chemistry. I'm 50% in, we finally got in a sex scene. Well, we're leading up to a sex scene. I absolutely feel nothing about it. I feel absolutely nothing about it. And I'm really sad because individually I like these characters, but together I don't feel like they have any chemistry. There's no tension. And like, I can deal with a book where there's no tension between the characters, but there's like this presumed tension between them because basically Opal, one of our POVs, she wins the lottery at the very beginning of the book, and she wins $500,000, and she decides that she's gonna uproot her life and move to... Goose has joined us. He needs attention. Anyway, she won the lottery and she decided that she was going to pursue art full-time because she felt like now she has the opportunity to do it. And so Opal decides to buy this flower farm. So she finds it on Facebook Marketplace, ends up buying it from this woman who just seems so nice. And she finds out that this woman didn't scam her, but she did end up selling the farm without consulting any of her family. And so her family member, her daughter, happens to be Pepper, who is our secondary POV, and she finds out from a rude awakening of Opal coming to move on the flower farm that her mother has sold it without consulting her at all. So Opal and Pepper end up in this deal that if Pepper can find the money to pay back Opal for what she paid for the farm, then Opal will just leave, you know, move on. But she basically put all of her money into this farm, so she's like, I can't just give it to you, like, we need to figure something out. So in theory, because of that, Opal and Pepper are supposed to have like this tension-filled relationship. And it just, I mean, it doesn't really feel that way. Like, I guess maybe in the beginning it did because Pepper was really upset. Pepper put a lot of blame on Opal. And Opal was like, I didn't know that I was buying this from your con artist mother. Like, how was I supposed to know this? So like the tension just doesn't feel earned, I guess. It doesn't feel like necessary. It's weird to explain, but basically we're 50% in and it read really, really fast. And I feel like the build up to them like finally kissing, because that tension wasn't there, it didn't really do anything for me. And I feel like individually these characters are great. Like, I like them individually, but I don't like them as a couple. I just feel nothing when they're together. I felt nothing when they kissed. I felt nothing when we were leading up to this sex scene. I don't know, like, they're just two characters that seem to have no chemistry, but they're gonna be together. I can say though that the one thing I really do appreciate about this book is the representation. Our main character Pepper, she is autistic, and our other main character Opal, she thinks she's on the spectrum. She's definitely neurodivergent. And then there's also some migraine rep. Pepper has migraines, and there was like a whole scene where she was talking about having a really bad flare up, and it felt very reminiscent to what I deal with. So like, I love those little bits and pieces of the representation, and I think that this is like well done in that regard, and I think the found family aspect of this is well done. I'm just struggling to get on board with the romance, and this is a romance novel, so that's a struggle. Good morning. So I finished Bloom last night. I actually finished this in pretty much one day. I was so optimistic about the second half, but it kind of just remained the same for me, where I just didn't feel the chemistry between the characters. I like them individually, but I felt nothing about this romance in the end. Also, I was ultimately really disappointed with how the characters interacted with each other in terms of like conflicts. And I don't necessarily mean because this has like a second act breakup. Most romances do, like that's just the way that it goes. And usually it doesn't really bother me. It depends on like what happens and how they come back from it. But it was more so that Opal would kind of create unnecessary conflict just because she was upset and didn't really understand where Pepper was coming from with something. And instead of talking about it, she would get irrationally angry and then blow up and kind of make it this thing. And it started to really grate on me because it happened like 3 different times. And the first time I was like, okay, I guess I can kind of see it. But then like the second and third time that it happened, I started to get frustrated. And I understand that people's communication styles are different. Like I understand that sometimes it's a little bit harder for people to communicate things or wants and needs, and it manifests in a way where like somebody explodes. But in this scenario, I felt like Opal's reaction to something was out of nowhere. Like it felt like it just happened and she just started getting this attitude and like getting upset about something and saying really awful things, and I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't understand like the whole purpose behind it besides like her just being irritated about something and then having this irrational reaction to it. So yeah, I think unfortunately the romance itself being unbelievable and me not really feeling the chemistry between these characters on top of the way that they like interacted and communicated was just a little bit frustrating. It got better in the end. Like they definitely have moments of growth in the end, which I can appreciate, but I'm just sad. I'm really disappointed by this one. I don't even know if I want to rate it at this point, but you know what? You know what today is? Today is release day for Guillotine, and I've really been looking forward to this. I loved Bloom. I read it earlier in the year and I unexpectedly read it. Like it was on my 24 and 24, so I knew that at some point I would be reading it, but I ended up reading it at a very random time and I loved it. I mean, my initial reaction was like, do I love this or do I hate this book? And the more that I've sat on it and the more that I've talked to people about it and the more people have read it and talked about it with me, oh my God, I loved it. I think it's gonna be one of my favorite books of the year. So of course, I was highly anticipating Guillotine after reading Bloom. Guillotine is also a novella, so I'm so excited because it seems like Delilah can really pack a punch in a novella, and I think I could read this today. I have so much that I wanna do today. I have a lot of chores that I want to get done, so I feel like I could totally read this in one sitting one day, and I'm really excited. I hope that it blows my brain up like Bloom did. So yeah, I'm gonna start that because I'm in the middle of some productivity sprints with my patrons. I'm gonna clean the house today. I'm going to film a little bit. I have a few videos and clips and stuff that I need to film, and then I'm going to try to focus on Guillotine for the rest of the day and my Animal Crossing island because I'm making really good progress. And guess what? Guess what? KK Slider is finally coming to my island. I don't know if I said, I know I talked about it in the beginning of this video, but I don't know if I said that I restarted my island completely, and I was having trouble getting KK Slider to my island, and I couldn't figure out why because it had never been a problem for me before. Like I've restarted my island 3 times at this point. I have a problem. It's never really been that big of an issue to get KK Slider to my island before. So I was like, what am I doing differently this time? And then I realized in my brain, I had this vision of doing like a more natural island and having the museum stay in the tent. And I was like, wouldn't that be really fun and cute and fresh? Well, it's not if you even want to terraform in the slightest, because you can't get KK Slider to your island if you leave your museum in the tent. So fair warning for anybody who wants to terraform, which was a very disappointing realization for me because I really love the tent. It's very cute. You know, if you wanted to do like a national parks theme, which was something that I was kind of going for a little bit, but that's out the door now. We're going back to the farm. We're going back to a farm, doing a fall farm theme. So anyway, I really want to work on my island. I'm listening to Guillotine while I'm cleaning, and we love a woman, a resourceful woman that uses a man to get ahead. You know what I mean? Like she just started dating this man so that she could get her dream job in fashion. I love that. Already off to a great start. I love a businesswoman. I'm 24% in, and I fear that my earlier statement is not correct. I think we might be following a little bit of a dummy. I think she's a dummy. I think I have to take back Woman in Business. I think she might be a little bit dumb. I can't lie, I feel like I'm reading a sillier version of Glass Onion. And I found out from my patron Nicole that actually one of the comp titles is Glass Onion. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I don't know if I like this. I'm gonna give it till the end, obviously, because Bloom, the ending was wild. But I don't think I like this. Good morning. So I finished Guillotine last night and I ended up really not liking it. Unfortunately, it's definitely landing at a 2 stars for me. This is just not my type of horror. I should preface that. I don't normally vibe with horror like this. For me, I think I had the wrong expectations going into this. Well, first off, like this is kind of marketed as our main character Des wanting to be in the fashion industry. And so she uses the son of this really famous editor at a fashion magazine to like get ahead in the fashion industry and like get close to his mom. So my expectations for this were a lot different. This is not about the fashion industry at all. Like, sure, that little line is the motivator for why Des, our main character, gets close to Patrick, who is the son of that editor, but the actual story takes place on this island, and on this island, shit goes awry. So this is like very revenge driven. This is very gratuitous. There's lots of violence, lots of blood. I don't know, it was just really unserious and I didn't really have a good time. I had so many ideas about where this was gonna go, which is probably my main issue. Like I should have just went in and let the story be what it was, but it was never gonna work for me from the jump because I don't like stuff like this. I don't usually vibe with horror that's gratuitous for the sake of being gratuitous and also like has a comical twist to it. I've realized that I very rarely enjoy comical horror, which is why I think Grady Hendrix is someone that I kind of steer clear of. I see this working for people, but I also think that if you were a lover of Bloom and you're expecting a story that has like a similar vibe to it, not necessarily even the trajectory of that story or like how it unfolds, but like the vibe of that story. There's such a vibe and an atmosphere to Bloom, and it's so unsettling the entirety of the story, whereas this one didn't really feel that way. Like Guillotine is not unsettling from the beginning. It doesn't have that type of atmosphere. Like when stuff starts kicking off, that's when it's like, oh shit. Okay. We're also being monologued to a lot, which like is my least favorite thing. So yeah, there was just a lot of elements in this that did not work for me the way that Bloom worked for me. And I also think like my expectations were through the roof just based on Bloom being like one of my favorite books of the year. So I think sure, that's my bad, but this was never gonna work for me. Even if I had really low expectations or high expectations, like this type of horror just doesn't work for me. So again, I don't want to deter people from reading this because it is a short book. Like you can get through it pretty quickly, especially if you are really interested in it and you like Delilah S. Dawson, because I do feel like this type of horror works for a lot of people. Anyway, 2 stars, moving on. I'm going to be starting An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. And okay, listen, this is like a 5-star prediction for me because I loved The Year of the Witching. And if there's one thing Alexis Henderson can do, it's write. So I'm pretty sure at the very least, I'm gonna have a good time. Is it gonna be 5 stars? I don't know, but I'm really hoping so. Because I can't lie, this week has kind of been a flop for my reading. Like I was so excited to read. I still am very excited to read, but it's been such a flop for my reading this week. So let's hope that Alexis can turn it around for me.
You're running away. Said you're sick of the city and due for a change, but I need you to stay. Just as long as it takes me to memorize your face, I'll draw it all day. Till your eyebrows point to your jawbone in just the right way. If you made a mistake, you can come back for a replay. I've been thinking about you these days, but you'll crash your car if you change your heart, making U-turns on the freeway, on the freeway, on the freeway.
So we have a few things to catch up on. When I talked to you last, I think it was Wednesday, and I was about to start Academy for Liars. I did start it, okay? But I realized very quickly that I was just not in the mood for that book, and I want to read it at the perfect time for me because I truly think it's going to be a 5-star. So I think I'm going to come back to Academy for Liars in October. I feel like that is the perfect time to pick that book up. But currently I'm just in the mood for like silly, goofy autumnal romances for whatever reason. Not that that's what I picked up. I ended up picking up Witchy. It's due back to the library in a few days, so I was like, I might as well pick this up. While I'm more in the mood for a romance, I was like, I really want to get to this. That's why I checked it out. So I ended up reading this in one sitting, and I had so much fun. I realized that I didn't know exactly what this was about. I think I thought this was like a modern witchy book. This actually is very fantastical. So it's set in this world, which I think is pronounced Highland. And in Highland, your magic is based on how long your hair is. And so the longer your hair is, the more power you seem to possess. But there's also this conspiracy within the kingdom that those who have excessively long hair are a threat to the kingdom and they get burnt at the stake. And so our main character, Nynaeve, when she was younger, she actually sees her father get murdered in a witch burning, and it has completely changed her life and her view on the kingdom. And when witches reach a specific age, they're tested to be conscripted into kind of an army. And for them, it is viewed as like this really big honor to serve your kingdom. And so Nynaeve, because of the fact that she saw what happened to her father, she is very anti getting conscripted, and she also charms her hair to be shorter so that people don't really know how powerful she is. But when conscription comes around for her and her classmates, it gets exposed that she has very long hair and that she's actually very powerful, and she decides to rebel against that. So this story is about her really grappling with the death of her father, really grappling with this conscription and her feelings about the kingdom, and trying to hide these things about herself because she's very scared, but also having to deal with the repercussions of rebelling and getting exposed for being extremely powerful. And I really, really loved this, but I did go on Goodreads and I realized that only 2 volumes are out right now, and I know that volume 2 doesn't finish the story, but I didn't see on Goodreads anything else about the 3rd volume. So I'm really nervous, and I don't know if I want to move on right now simply because I don't know when the next volume is going to come out. But otherwise, I had a lot of fun with this. Like, it's very cute YA fantasy graphic novels. I usually love a YA graphic novel. It really hits for me. So I loved this. I don't really rate graphic novels individually at this point. I always kind of rate them as a whole because they're never like complete stories, you know? So I didn't rate this, but I had a really fun time. So yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with me this past week and reading so many books. I was really trying to escape some things this week. Not my battery dying in the middle of that. Anyway, I was trying to escape a lot this week, and I hope that you had a fun time. Let me know down below if you've read any of these and enjoyed them. Otherwise, if you've made it this far and want to leave an emoji, feel free to leave a witchy emoji down below, and I will talk to y'all next time. Bye.